Hi, my friend. I hope that you're doing good and that you are experiencing God's goodness. Now we will look into Christ's temptations. Both Matthew and Luke tells us the story about how Christ were tempted, but they have a little bit differences among how they are telling their story about the sequence specifically about Christ's temptations. So I don't know if you have been wondering about this, if you have been reading Matthew and Luke together and you have kind of comparing the sequences, and it's a puzzling question actually that has inquired many. In this exploration that we will set apart on, that we will kind of enter into right now, we will dive into this biblical mystery, and I assure you this will be an exciting ride. So are you with us? Let's start. So in Matthew 4, verses 5 to 10, the Bible places the proposal jump from the pinnacle of the temple as the second of Christ's three temptations, with the offer to the world empire as the third. Okay. However, in Luke 4, verse 5 to 12, Luke paints a completely different picture actually, and he makes the offer at the temple the second temptation and the leap from it to the pinnacle as the third. So it has changed the order. Matthew has the pinnacle and then the temptation for word dollar, and Luke has it the opposite around. So how in the world can this be explained? So this will highlight a little bit of the differences in the different gospels that we have, and how we read them, and how their nature is, you could say. So this is not the only example we have, but there are other similar examples actually. And this, as we will see now, it highlights not that everyone is just strict to literal order, but each author, Mark and Matthew and Luke, they are doing something, they are telling their own story. It has the ground factual event, but they are using this to tell their own story, and they emphasize different things. And at the end of this video, I will have a modern example which will kind of also illustrate and help you to grasp this. So, but just to give you, before we dive into it, some other New Testament examples. So we have the cursing of the fig tree. We have one version in Matthew 21 and one in Mark 11, and it's not, they are telling it in a little bit different way actually. And there are different narrative emphasis in the way that they tell it. Also, we have the staff passage in Mark 6, we have it in Matthew 10, and we have it in Luke 9. So Luke 9 actually has no staff. So we will see that these different themes of unique perspectives of each gospel writer helps us to see kind of what are their narrative and messages. So now we need to consider, for a better understanding of this, we need to consider first the order of temptation in Matthew and in Luke. So Matthew, he uses adverbs like then and again a lot in his whole gospel, and these adverbs, then and again, it signifies a strict consequence in the chronology, how the event kind of unfolds. So for example, you have in Matthew 4:5, then the devil takes him along to the holy city, and indicating a clear order. So when Jesus resists casting himself down to the temple, Matthew mentions, again the devil takes him along to the very high mountain. So these adverbs, then and again, suggest an intentional order. So we also have, when we move on, we have Luke's perspective. So in contrast, Luke uses more simple conjugations like and but. So as you understand, and but, they don't give us that clear chronological statements as then and again would have. So Matthew is more concerned with the chronology. Luke uses a language that highlights different things. So You can look at Luke as more casual, and at least in terms of chronological. So you can see, for example, when you were a kid and you have had a fantastic, great dinner with your family. It's a weekend and it's your birthday maybe, and you just want to retell the story, and you start with telling about the cake and the dessert. We had dessert, it was great, amazing, da da da. And yes, we also have food, hot dogs and so on. But you are so kind of focused on the dessert. So this is kind of what you mentions first, but actually, if you would tell it in chronological sense, you would start with the hot dogs for meal and then coming to the dessert. So this is kind of Luke's approach. So Luke's approach then may appear surprising because he's generally meticulous about chronological accuracy. However, in this specific chapter, he seems to adopt a proleptic order for the dramatic effect. Now, what did I just say? Luke generally is very concerned with chronology, but here he seems to be more concerned with something else, the drama. So what is this drama that Luke is concerned about? Well, he highlights Jesus' return his return to Nazareth after facing these spiritual trials, where he encounters disbelief and rejection. The sequence adds dramatically contrast to the narrative. Interestingly, Jesus, he visits Capernaum, and the miracles he performed there are hinted at by the crowds of Nazareth even before Luke mentions Capernaum by name. So, in essence, Luke prioritized the ideal order of a strict chronological one for the sake of the narrative impact. This approach helps him to emphasize the stark difference between the Nazareth and Capernaum, and how they receive him, and this also underscores the challenges that Jesus faced. So in conclusion, Luke, he does something dramatic, and he's not as concerned with telling the consequences in a strict order just as Matthew is. So this is why Matthew and Luke, they have different sequence in their temptations, but it's just a different way of telling the story. So let's say, just as wrapping up with a modern example, that you and your friends, you went to a race, you are looking at Formula 1 or something, and you're just telling, when you come back, and you were telling the different friends in your group that you didn't invite them to this because it was you and your best friend. So you and your best friend, you're telling this friend of group how it was in the Formula 1 race, and you're telling a slightly different stories from each other. One is saying that, well, we watched, and then we had snacks on our way home, and the other one, it's just like he liked the snacks. He was like, yeah, we watched and have snacks, and it seems that you had it at the same time, while the other said, well, we had it after. So this is just a simple example how you will tell it and you will emphasize different things. No big deal actually, but actually it's a big deal because it's the Word of God, and we need to read it seriously, we need to read it carefully, and you need to just compare the different texts also, and read it in the details, and read it comparing it with the other, and seeing kind of, well, how does this highlight the differences in theology and the difference in the story that they want to portray, Matthew and Luke. So I hope this has been intriguing. I hope you'll follow for some more material. Also look into Udemy, where I have some great, actually interesting courses for you if you want to dig deeper. All right, see you later. God bless.